Hi everyone and welcome to our live stream. We have 28 students at the moment. Okay guys, sorry. Sorry again. There was a call. So for today we're going to discuss about constructing a multiple choice test. So just to give you a review, last time now we discussed about constructing a binomial choice test. So for today, we're going to talk about constructing a multiple choice test. So basically, halos pareho sila, but for binomial choice test, there are only two choices. But for a multiple choice test, there are three or more choices. Okay, so let's begin. So these are the guidelines, for a multiple choice test. Teka lang. Ito muna. So when we talk about a multiple choice test, it consists of more than two options. So it has two parts. We have the stem and the options. Okay, options contains the best or correct answer and two or more distractors. Okay, two or more distractors. Distractors must all be possible answers. In other words, when we talk about distractors, these are the options. These are not the right or not the best options. All right. So one is the best or correct answer, and the rest would be called your distractors. But in designing a multiple choice test, even the distractors must all be possible answers. In other words, these incorrect or not the best answer are still answers that are could catch the attention of the test takers, even if they are not correct. Okay, so we call them your distractors. Okay, so these are some of the basic guidelines that you have to consider in constructing a multiple choice test. We have the first one: use negatively stated stems sparingly, and when using negatives such as not, underline, or bold the print. Okay, I'm sure you noticed this in some of your tests or some of the tests which you took, that negatively stated stems like the word not, or for example, not an example. Which of the following is not an example? So usually the word not, and sometimes teachers would also include an example. They would bolden this, or sometimes they underline this word. Okay, just to make sure that the students do understand that the stem is stated in using a negative word. Okay, because we don't like to confuse the student, or we don't like the students just to miss the word not and give you the wrong answer. Okay, we want them to know that you made use of the word not or the negative words and still get the correct answer or the wrong answer. Okay, so we can use negative sparingly. Okay, I'm not saying that you should not be using negatively stated stems, but you can use them, but you have to use them sparingly. Okay, and make sure to underline or bold the print, or sometimes they would italicize bold and then underline the negative word like not. Okay, all right, we have number two: use none of the above and all of the above sparingly also, and when you do use them, don't always make them the right answer. Okay, so here we can make use of none of the above. We can also make use of all of the above, but you have to use them sparingly. Okay? Minsan-minsan lang. Okay? And make sure na hindi palaging yun ang tamang sagot. Okay? I'm not saying na wag niyong gawing tamang sagot. What I'm trying to say here is wag palaging yun ang tamang sagot. Okay? Then we have the third: only one option should be correct or clearly best. Okay, that's why you have to undergo a lot of revisions, and you also have to review the questions in a test before finally deciding to finally print the tests. Okay, if that's printed, or before you put the test online. Okay, you have to proofread them. Okay, double check. Okay, so that you are sure that there is only one correct or the best answer. Okay, we can't have two or three correct answers in an option, in a question. Okay, or in an item, because that is sacrificing the what do you call this, validity of the test. There should only be one. Okay, we proceed to the fourth. Oops, this one is small. Okay, all options should be homogeneous and nearly equal in length. Okay, when we talk about homogeneity of options, so for example, you are going to ask a question like, which president of the Philippines was overthrown during the EDSA revolution? So here we are talking about president of the Philippines. Therefore, all the choices should be president of the Philippines. That's homogeneous. Okay, homogeneous options. You cannot include, let's say, an actor who was never a president, or an American president, or a Chinese president, or any other president of different nationality. All the options should be Filipino presidents. Okay, so that's one we talk about homogeneous. Okay, and also when you talk about equal in length, for example, if the choices are statements, then you have to make sure that they are. When we talk about equal in length, we are not talking about exactly the same number of words. It could be that one option would be, let's say, 9 words or 6 words, 6 words, for example. Then the other option would be 7, the other would be 8, and then another 7, and something like that. Avoid including an option which is very long and then the rest are short, because sometimes students who are guessing the answer would always pick the longest option, okay, which most of the time is also the correct answer. Okay, you don't want that to happen. So what you want is for the students not to guess. You want your students to think about it, to analyze the choices together with the STEM, and answer the best that they can. Okay, that's what you want to happen. You don't want them to guess. That's why we encourage, okay, all options to be homogeneous and equal in length. Okay. All right. The stem or the question should contain only one main idea. Okay. There should only be uh, one main idea in the question. In other words, you are only asking one main idea, which will give you one answer. Okay, multiple ideas in a stem will most likely give you variety also of options. Okay, so you have to avoid that also. Then we keep all options either singular or plural. So here, the options when the stem is asking for an answer which is singular, the options should be, all of them should be singular. When the option is asking for a plural answer, then the options should all of them should be plural. Okay. Then we have the seventh, have 4 or 5 responses per stem. Okay. So in other words, you must construct 4 to 5 options. Okay, 4 to 5 options. But I think, I do not know, but in the lower grades, let's say grade 1 or 2 or 3, I think there are only 3 options most of the time. Okay, but for college, you can go for 4 to 5 responses or options. Okay, so you can do that in college. In high school, yeah, most of the time it's 4. Okay, sometimes you can add another one, so there will be 5, 4 or 5 also for junior or senior high. Pwede siguro yan, no? And then we have the seventh. When using incomplete statements, place the blank space at the end. So for example, in a multiple choice test, you cannot put the blank at the beginning of the statement. It should always be at the end. Okay. The process of blah 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 is called blank. Then you have A, B, C, D, and E. It's not correct to ask a question that starts with a blank. Okay. For example, blank refers to the blah 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 A. Okay, although test takers or students know that they have to fill in that blank at the beginning of the statement, but for a multiple choice question, the blank should be at the end of the statement. Okay, all right. And then we have, when possible, organize the responses. Okay, I think we do that in tests like in Prof Ed. We usually organize it. For example, when the question asks, "Did the teacher do the right things?" For example, there is a situation at the beginning of the STEM, and then at the second part of the STEM, the teacher would ask, "Did the teacher do the right thing?" Then you have A, yes because blah blah blah. B would also be yes because blah blah blah. And then C would be no because blah blah blah. And then D, no. So we are organizing the options. First two are yeses with different reasons. The last two would be no's with different reasons. So that's how you organize the responses. Again, our goal here is not to confuse the students in a test. What we want is for the students to understand the question and to analyze which among the options will give a correct or the best answer to that question. That's what we want to do. Okay, that's why I've been telling you before that tests are not meant to confuse the students. Of course, it would be different if you have a, let's say, a question that would stimulate higher order thinking skills and you want your students to go beyond what they read, then you can introduce a tricky question. Okay, if that's what you want, you know. But of course, you cannot include a question, a tricky question, because the question becomes tricky because uh, the choices are disorganized, okay, or there are faulty words that are in a faulty part of the responses, okay. That's not the right way to include a tricky question. Sometimes in math, I would ask a tricky question as a bonus point. So if they get it correctly, I'm going to give them the full point. If they don't get it correctly, then they will not get any bonus point for that tricky question. Okay, so that's what I do. Then reduce wordiness. Okay, the shorter the question is, the better. Okay, because sometimes students do not like to read a lot of question, words in a question or in a stem. Okay, but for prof ed questions or in a reading class where the focus is to test your reading ability, then that is accepted, okay? Baka sabihin niyo na, "Eh, bakit sa English?" Ano, o kaya dun sa klase namin na ganito ang haba-haba nung tanong. Baka ang purpose dun sa English na yon is to test your reading ability. So it's okay that the question contains very long, uh, sentences, okay? Or a couple or more than two sentences. Okay, that would be okay, depending on what you are trying to test. So you have to reduce wordiness. Okay. I would also include here to use simple words. Okay. When asking questions. Okay. Of course, that would be a different story in um, mathematics, where they make use a different language, like a mathematical language. So that would be an excuse, or an exemption. Then we have number 10, when writing distractors, think of incorrect responses that students might make. Okay, so that's why it's very important when you are teaching to take note of the wrong responses from your students and figure out why they gave that question, that answer. Okay, so that when you will be asking a similar question in a test, then you might include that misconception in the choices. Okay, so you have to think. You go inside there, what they are thinking, and include those responses from the students as a distractor. Okay, so hindi pwedeng titingin ka lang sa ceiling and then may naisip ka lang na distractor, ilalagay mo lang. Okay, for example, in math, when your students are solving on the board, for example, when you ask them to solve something and they came up with a wrong answer because of a wrong procedure or probably a misunderstanding on the concept which you taught them, then you have to take note of that so that when you will be asking a similar question in the test, he used that misconception or wrong process, okay, or wrong procedure to come up with a distractor. Okay? Bakit ko ilalagay yon? Para matest mo kung yung bang mali na yon ng estudyante na kinorek mo during the discussion ay na-correct ba? Okay? naitama mo ba yung pagkakamali na yun ng estudyante, mate-test mo ngayon yun doon sa item which you will include in the tests, okay? Using the incorrect procedure ng estudyante na yon, okay? Para mapalabas mo siya as a distractor. Okay, so those are just some of the basic guidelines for multiple choice questions. Now, we have questions in a multiple choice test that are called situational judgment tests or SJT tests. Usually, these are the questions that you encounter in the licensure examination for teachers, and most of the time, same questions that you see that are being given to you, I mean, by your teachers in professional education subjects like assessment in learning. The questions we are giving you are mostly situational judgment tests, okay, or SJT. This is not, of course, only to prepare you for the licensure examination for teachers, but also we'd like to to test higher order thinking skills. Okay? Sa inyo. Kaya ganun yung klase ng questioning na na-encounter nyo mostly for what do you call this? Professional education subjects or so we call them SJTs or situational judgment tests. So what are these? What are you going to do? So when we talk about situational judgment test, it's a type of test which presents realistic scenarios similar to those that would be encountered in life. Okay? Kaya nga tinawag natin na situational. And from that situation, you are going to make judgment to get the correct answer. That's why it's called situational judgment test or SJTs. Okay? So bibigyan kayo dito ng realistic scenario. Most of the time in your prof ed subjects, the scenarios that are being given to you are like classroom scenarios, decision making that teachers would make, and what do you call this? Even your students, how students react to inside the classroom. So those are most of the time the scenarios that are being given to you by your teachers. Okay, so those are SJTs. For situational judgment tests, presents the test taker with realistic hypothetical scenarios and asks the individual to identify the most appropriate response or to rank the responses in order they feel is most effective. So most of the time for SJTs, um, ang ating mga choices dito ay almost all of them are correct, but there's one that stands out. Yun yung tinatawag natin na best answer. Sometimes in the test, they would ask you which is the best thing to do. Or yeah, which is the best thing to do. For example, there's a situation, and then the test item will ask you what is the best thing to do in this situation. Okay, so all the choices there are correct, but you are being asked to give the best thing to do in that situation. So you have to think, analyze, and think critically which among those seemingly similar and correct answers is the best. Kaya medyo mahirap i-take ang mga situational judgment tests. Okay? It would require higher order thinking skills for you to be able to answer questions like this. And of course, dito mo matitest kung yung mga estudyante mo ay naintindihan yung concept just beyond memorizing, kung alam ba nila itong i-apply in real world situations. Dito mo matitesting using situational judgment test. Okay? Of course, this is also a multiple choice test, So why are we going to use SJTs? These tests are designed to clarify the difference between average from superior response. The most effective response will look at situation from various angles, consider a wide range of action, and take account the long-term consequences of action. Okay? That's why I told you medyo mahirap i-take itong SJT. Okay? And most of the time, these are the questions that you will encounter in your licensure examination for teachers or your LET. Kasi, ah, huhugutin mo lahat ng mga concepts na pinag-aralan mo and you have to use them all to analyze the question and to choose the best answer. Like sabi niya rito, take account of the long-term consequences of action, look at the various angles of the situation. So, ganun yung pagte-take ng ganitong klase ng test. Okay. So, formats in SJT question. One format would be ranking questions. They will ask you to rank in order your response to a situation. Okay, so that's one. And the other format would be multiple choice questions and ask you to choose the most appropriate action or decision to make in a given situation. Okay, so yun yung sinabi ko na kanina. Things to remember in making SJT. Okay, since SJT questions require learners to identify the best or the worst answer, the system should be presented in the manner in which a test taker will choose the correct answer by eliminating the distractors. Okay? So usually, ang tinatanong natin dito ay may word na best. Which of the following best describes what the teacher did? Okay? So ganon. So lahat, halos tama, and then you have to eliminate the distractors and choose the best answer. In making the choices, medyo mahirap din gumawa ng SJT because the correct answer should always be the one that actually solves the problem or answer the question. Logically, the correct answers need to be distinct from the other answer options. Okay? Hence, if two answer options seems very similar, it would be very difficult to identify the distractor. Okay? So, ganun yung gusto nating mangyari dito. Like the choices or the distractors and the best answer, they should be similar. Parang halos tama lahat. Okay? Sometimes, when you're taking this kind of test, parang ano ba yun? Parang tama naman lahat sila. Okay? So, when you will be crafting the choices, yun ang iisipin mo. Lahat dapat ng choices ay similar, but one of them should stand out, and that would be the best answer. So, ganun ang gawin mo pag gagawa ka ng SJT. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. I'm just going to show you an example. This one is a very simple example. The topic here would be kalabisan or surplus. The idea, ang kalabisan ay dahilan upang magkaroon ng pagbaba ng presyo upang makamit ang presyong equilibrio. Okay, so this is the idea. This is the main topic and then you have the idea here. So ito yung gagawin mong main idea na to, gagawin nating question. So dito sa presyo 1,000, ang demand para sa cellphone A ay 10,000. Ngunit nag-produce na cellphone A ng 14,000. Anong dapat gawin upang magkaroon ng equilibrio? Okay? So, bawasan ang demand, taasan ang presyo, ibaba ang presyo. Now, the students will be able to answer this if they know this concept. Yung ang kalabisan ay dahilan upang magkaroon ng pagbaba ng presyo upang makamit ang presyong equilibrio. Okay? And the answer here would be E. Okay? So, simple lang yun. Here, to test knowledge, alin sa mga sumusunod, knowledge lang ito, ang nagpapahiwatig na may kakapusan sa bansa? Kung mabilis ang paggawa ng produkto, kung sagana ang produkto sa pamilihan, kung may kaguluhan sa politika, kung limitado ang supply ng kalakal sa bansa. So seemingly, these are all, they appear to be all correct, pero one of them stands out. Okay? Now, for process, sa papaanong paraan mo maitataguyod ang karapatan sa tamang impormasyon? Okay? Lahat ng mga choices dito ay nagtataguyod ng karapatan. Okay? Pero ang pipiliin ng estudyante dito ay yung the best na sagot. Okay? So, ganon ang paggawa for process. And for understanding, ay tuturing na kagustuhan ng isang bagay kapag higit ito sa batayang pangangailangan. Kailan maituturing na batayang pangangailangan ng isang produkto o serbisyo? Magagamit mo ito para magmadali ang mahirap na gawain, nagbibigay ito ng kasiyahan at kaginhawaan. So, if you try to check the choices, halos tama lahat, 'di ba? Pero sabi ko nga, one of them should stand out. Then we have another example for understanding, ano? Nagsimula sa maliit na puhunan ang negosyo ni Mang Senon. Okay, so dito, binibigyan kayo dito ng senaryo. Hanggang ito ay lumaki at nagkaroon ng iba't ibang sangay sa Bulacan. Alin ang hindi dahilan ng kanyang pag-unlad? Okay? So it's a situation. So tignan nyo yung negative dito na hindi ay naka-bold and all caps. Okay? Alright, so things to remember, making a good test takes time. Teachers have the obligation to provide their students with the best evaluation, and test plays an essential role in the life of the students, parents, teachers, and okay, whatever. Okay, so there's one thing that I would like to point out about the directions in making a test. Ano? Pag yung direction mo, choose the best answer, then yung pinaka-main, ano? Halimbawa, directions, yung pinaka-umpisa ng test. Ang nilagay mo doon ay choose the best answer. Make sure that all the items ay puro mamimili ka ng best answer. Ibig sabihin lahat ng choices na items na yon ay tama pero isa ang best. Okay? Ang ginagawa ko 'pag gumagawa ako ng multiple choice test, I do not put sa directions yung choose the best answer kasi hindi lahat ng items ko would call for the best answer. Sometimes it calls for the correct answer. Magkaiba kasi yung best answer and correct answer. Ibig sabihin kasi 'pag correct answer, isang tamang sagot and then the rest are wrong. I mean, hindi hindi ito the three other the distractors are not possible answers na hindi sila puwedeng isagot. 'Yun ang ibig sabihin. 'Pag sinabi mong best, choose the best answer, lahat sila ay tama, pero isa sa kanila ang pinakatama. Okay? Sa choose the correct answer, iisa lang ang correct na correct and yung iba ay mga mali. Okay? Pero yung mga mali na yan ay mga possible answers pa rin. Okay? Halimbawa, 8 plus 5 equals blank. Okay? A, 5, B, 8, C, 13. Okay? So, yung A and B are really wrong kasi 8 plus 5 is not 8. It's not even 5. Okay? And the only correct answer here is 13. So, the question there should be, what is the correct sum of 8 and 5? I mean, that's not how you should state that, but just to give you an example, ano? So, ang pipiliin mo dito ay correct answer. Pag choose the best answer naman, may sitwasyon, and then pagpipilian ka kung ano yung pinakatamang dapat gawin. So, dito, ang tanong mo dito ay, which is the best? May word na best. Okay? So, doon sa main direction in creating or constructing a test, I would suggest na wag nyo nang ilagay doon na choose the correct or the best answer, ganon. Sabihin nyo lang, choose the letter encircle the letter of your choice. Pwedeng ganon ang ilalagay nyo. Ano? Kung ipapa-encircle mo yung sagot. Para doon sa bawat question, doon ka nagagamit ng best o kaya ng correct na word. Okay? Halimbawa, item number 2, you want them to choose the best answer. So, itatanong mo doon, which of the following best? Oh, di ba? Which of the following is the correct thing to do? Oh, pwedeng ganun siguro. So, ibig sabihin, isa lang ang correct na kailangan gawin doon, the rest ay mga maling dapat gawin. Ay, mga maling gawain. Yun, yung ganun. Okay? So, that's how you distinguish correct from best when it comes to multiple choice test. Kaya pag kayo ay nakakita ng ganyan sa test at tinatanong yung best, huwag kayo kaagad-agad na pagbasa mo pa lang ng letter A, feeling mo tama na kasi siya, so A na ang sinagot mo. Hindi mo alam na pati yung B tama din, C and D ay tama din. Eh, ang tinatanong pala niya ay best. Diba? So, ang gagawin mo doon ay kailangan mong i-check kung alin yung pinaka-the best sa kanila na sagot. So, basahin mo lahat ng choices. Unlike kapag ang tinatanong ay correct lang, nakita mo yung letter A, yun na yung correct talaga, you don't need to look at the other options kasi nakuha mo na yung correct na sagot. Kasi ang tinatanong ay correct answer. Okay? So, I hope guys that's clear, no? Para ma-distinguish nyo yung ating best and correct answer. So, yeah. I think that's about it for multiple choice tests. If you have questions now, please feel free to ask questions. Pwede kayong magtanong ngayon para masagot natin because I already told you earlier in your GC, in our GC, that you're going to make a multiple choice test and a true or false test, okay, which is your project. So if there are things that you would like to clarify in our discussion this afternoon, please do it now before we end the live stream. Okay, so I'm going to wait for questions. So I hope that's clear. So we finished binomial already, then this is multiple choice test. So I know that you are ready to make your table of specifications. Then I'm going to check your table of specifications, make the necessary corrections, return them to you, and then you incorporate all my comments and corrections, then return it back to me. Then you can start making your 30 item tests. Okay? All right, questions, guys. Come on. Okay. Wala ba kayong tanong? Very few of you are here again. Like there are only 47. And I have like 200 students enrolled in this class. Okay. Parang wala yatang sumasagot sa inyo dyan. Okay, so I'm waiting for your questions. Hello? Nandiyan pa ba kayo? Okay, how about I want to hear from our 49 viewers. Yan, parang nagmamadali yata kayo at no question lahat. Okay? Okay, so Kimberly and Florian, sila lang yung sumasagot. Yung iba siguro naka-ano lang, naka-view lang. Ano? All right. Okay, looks like you guys don't have questions at all. Yeah, I do hope that you understood the lecture, no? Not because you are just ashamed to ask a question. Uh, or maybe you can share some experiences, some observations you have with the multiple choice tests which were given to you. May mga nakita ba kayo na violate nung mga test na tinake ninyo previously, ano? So, pwede kayong mag-share, okay? Kahit hindi siya question, maybe sharing, ano? Let's see kung meron kayong mga na-observe na parang violation based from the guidelines which I gave you. O yan, pwede kayong magkwento. Huwag tayong magtsismisan, ano? Magkwento lang kayo ng experience that if you have. Yan, si Florian meron daw sa ng examinations nila nung high school, okey. So, yeah, as future teachers guys kailangan ano, marunong kayong gumawa ng test and it's very important din na, ah, you have a good command of the English language and you are very confident with your grammar. Kasi 'pag gagawa kayo ng test questions, requirement 'yun. Ayaw niyo naman na i-screenshot nila yung test na ginawa niyo na may mga grammar. Mga spelling anomalies siguro, yung mga na-miss niyo na maling spelling o kaya may na-miss kayong word na talagang prino-read mo pero hindi mo pa rin nakita, those are acceptable, ano. Pero yung ang mali talaga yung grammar, medyo hindi yun acceptable sa ating mga teachers. Kaya kailangan, marunong kayo ano, na mag-construct ng sentence or ng questions, okay. So, napakaimportante yun. Ha, may question dito, ano ba yung tanong niya? Saan daw isa-submit? If you're asking about the TOS, i-submit niyo yun sa GC and you have to label it TOS para alam ko. TOS, then your name. Okay? So, yeah. I think that's it for today. I'm not seeing any question. Dito, dun po sa na-discuss kanina po is naalala ko po kasi um, na dapat po pala hindi po nasa harap yung blank. Yung sa exam po namin noon is yeah, tama yan Florian. I've been seeing a lot ano, of, tests, teacher-made tests na yung blank ay nasa umpisa. Blank is cold, gano'n yung kanilang style. So, hindi puwede yon. Yung blank usually ay nasa end, okey? Yun. So, yeah, I think maganda yung observation mo kasi ako din na-observe ko rin 'yan. Okay, so I think that's about it for today. For more questions, guys, or clarifications, you use our GC. Please ask questions if you do not understand, ano? Kasi kailangan yung maintindihan 'yan para mas mapadali yung paggawa ninyo ng test ninyo. So, questions will be entertained in our GC, okay. Para sa mga late ano, na pumasok, you still have time to watch this live kasi meron naman ito sa YouTube channel and the rest will also have to do that para maintindihan nila, okay. So, yeah, I think that's about it for today. Thank you for meron pa sir, 'di ba po dapat ay i-consider yung time kapag gagawa ka ng test questions? And then nasabi ko po kanina na avoid wordiness sa multiple choice but accepted po if ano 'to, isang goal naman is to, yun naputol, okey. Kaya puwede siya kapag ang goal mo is test the reading comprehension, okey? About sa mga mahahabang tanong po pero madali lang yung question pero nakakaubos ng oras, accepted naman but doesn't consider the time. 'Pag hindi kailangan na mahaba yung tanong, ano, hindi mo dapat habaan yung tanong, okey. Sometimes may mga teachers kasi na nagpapatawa lang, ano, ang dami-daming kinukuwento tapos wala pala dun yung tanong. Hindi yun puwede kasi the test is not the time to crack jokes, ano. You can crack joke during the discussion, but the test for me is quote unquote, sacred kasi the results of the test will be used in judgment, in making decisions inside the classroom. So, kailangan wag tayong magjo-joke diyan sa test na 'yan, okey? So, kung hindi kailangang mahaba, wag hahabaan, okey? Dapat maiksi lang siya. Pero kung kailangan mahaba, for example, in SJT or situational judgment test, puwedeng 1 to 2 sentences, okay. Pang-tatlo siguro yung tanong. That is acceptable. Or in a reading comprehension, minsan paragraph nga yung nandun, eh, sobrang haba. Pero acceptable siya kasi nga reading comprehension. Pero kung hindi naman kailangan, bakit mo hahabaan, 'di ba? Una, pinahihirapan mo yung sarili mo. Pangalawa, nililito mo lang yung mga estudyante. Okay. So again, our purpose in assessment ay hindi para lituhin yung mga estudyante. It's to test whether, ah, naintindihan nila yung mga topics na tinuro natin, or it's also to test their understanding, their level of understanding. It's also to test if they could apply this in real world situations. So yun yung purpose natin dito. Okay? So if you know the purpose of assessment or purposes of assessment, okay? If you know why do we assess, if you know where do we use assessment results, then I'm sure magiging magaling kayo na gumawa ng test kasi alam mo kung para saan yung ginagawa mo. Okay? All right, thank you for that, Laika. Okay, so yeah, ayan, pangalawang beses ko na magpaalam. Let's end this lecture discussion. So I'd like to thank you for your time. I know this is not our uh, time talaga na nakaalat, but thank you sa lahat ng mga nag-a-attend ng mga live discussion natin. I really appreciate it. And I have to see you again tomorrow. Okay? So yeah, that's it for today, guys. Goodbye.